So, when it comes to ban lists, everyone is always talking about how to address the meta and/or degenerate strategies in a format. Naturally, this makes sense. These are the decks that are either hogging the spotlight or are the root of all evil. Rogue decks aren't talked about because, well, they suck. You don't need to hit something that isn't broken, right? But what if that wasn't the case? Let's say, hypothetically, that a certain rogue deck of our choosing was somehow tier 0 at this point in time. How did we go about hitting it? In this video, we're going to pretend that by some means, my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh archetype, Punk, is currently a tier 0 deck in the format and needs to be addressed for a healthy metagame to resume. We're then going to devise a series of ban lists that do exactly that, according to prior unspoken trends in official ban lists per Konami. There will thus be 3 separate ban lists in total, each building upon the previous. The first ban list will likely check Punk as to curb some of its power, but still enable it to be the topmost contender. The second ban list will actually nerf the archetype so that it's still competitive, but not outright dominant. The final ban list is where we'll finally write Punk's name in stone and completely kill it off. Note that, for the sake of simplicity, only pure Punk will be talked about. We won't give the archetype any new cards. Again, we're just dreaming up a make-believe situation where Punk, as is somehow meta. Excited to see what I have planned? Well, let's get on with things. So, as I had stated in the intro, this first ban list aims to lightly check Punk. We want to acknowledge that the deck is tier 0 and deserves hits, but not actually punish the deck as much as it needs to be yet. Lists in the past that employ this same approach for other archetypes typically target their consistency. I do like this idea. It allows us to check the deck without actually affecting its core stratagem. Therefore, we'll start this list off by semi-limiting Emergency Teleport to be shortened to E-Tele for the remainder of this video. E-Tele getting hit to some capacity should make sense. The card turns Punk's normally 1.5 card combos into 1 card combos. It's very much an unfair extender for the deck. I didn't want to limit E-Tele, however, because I felt like that might be too strong a hit this early. Next, we'll limit Ogre Dance. This might sound like it would hurt a lot at first. Ogre Dance is, after all, a rota for basically the entire archetype. However, if you pay attention to Punk lists, a lot of people aren't actually playing the card at 3. Many players only use 1 to 2 copies, even in pure builds. So limiting Ogre might not actually harm the deck as much as you would think. On top of this, you have the option to supplement those extra copies of Ogre Dance with a card like Dark Spirit's Mastery. Sure, that spell might not be the best rota in the game, but it does speak to the fact that losing copies of Ogre Dance could quickly be supplemented. Now, let's put Extreme Session to 1. This choice might sound redundant since the vast majority of Punk players only play 1 copy. Making this choice, however, prevents abuse of more than 1 copy in lists that do favor that. The limit also gives non-Punk players the relief of outing the single field spell when they do, say with a hand trap like Ghost Ogre, or with an MST. Finally, I'll limit Dragon Drive. With pure Punk, having multiple copies of Dragon Drive can be crucial. On turns subsequent to your first, you typically need the second Dragon Drive to either keep your engine flowing and or to trigger the field spell multiple times. Limiting the card to 1 isn't close to an end-all be-all, but it does restrict the deck's ability to grind in those longer games. This choice also makes it so that if a Punk player's single copy of Dragon Drive gets removed from play, they can't abuse the Synchro Monster's ability to recur itself from grave. After a ban list like this, I expect Punk to still be extremely healthy. As intended, the archetype lost some consistency, but its raw power is still present, evident through its core combo being relatively unaffected, and boss monsters like Psychic M Punisher, Amazing Dragon, and Friends still remaining untouched. Alright, now we're pulling out the big guns. People are getting tired of us Punk players drawing 2 per turn, setting up Baron and Amazing Dragon, so Konami is here to actually put on the hurt. I'll start this list off by limiting E-Tele. I think at this point the action should be warranted. If you want other decks to have a chance to catch up, putting E-Tele to 1 makes Punk less efficient in assembling its board. Sure, it will be kind of sacky when that 1 E-Tele does show up, but I don't believe an outright ban is merited. Next, I'll limit Foxy Tune. Foxy Tune is a critical combo piece for Punk. You typically search it with Xayah and then use it to tutor out either Shirakusai or Deerno. Putting the card to 1 means you can still search it for your usual combo, but you can't reliably open it for those cases where your Xayah gets negated. Follow-up turns also become weaker since you would most likely have exhausted your one copy going first and so become reliant on other extenders to go for game. The last card I'll hit for now is Psychic End Punisher to 1. Psychic End Punisher is obviously an insane card. It can be surprisingly hard for certain matchups to overcome, and being able to put out 2 or 3 duplicates on field only increases the pressure. In a similar logic to me limiting Extreme Session and Dragon Drive on the first ban list, limiting Punisher makes it so that Punk still has its incredible boss monster, but cannot spam the synchro multiple times. It's possible that these 3 separate hits, even in tandem with the first ban list, might not actually be enough to be considered hard nerfs. Predicting ban lists on a non-existent format does tend to do that to a person after all. Even so, assuming these are reasonable nerfs, I would predict Punk still doing well at events after this list goes into effect. There are a lot of generic cards you can implement to make up for our lost extenders, even if the latter were exponentially better. Also, although Punisher was limited, your core combos in a similar manner to the first ban list are still completely legal. At the end of the day, however, 1 E-Telly, 1 Foxy Tune, and 1 Punisher are definitely going to hurt Punk, and would show by a loss of the archetype's tier 0 status. Okay, so now let's actually kill the deck off for good. There are only 3 hits here, but I'm sure they are to be some of the most detrimental. Firstly, Xaymin to 1. Xaymin is typically your go-to so that you can start your plays. It's one of your best normal summons, obviously being able to tutor out basically your entire deck. Putting it to 1 is a huge blow to Punk's consistency. You would likely be forced to play 3 Shirakusai and or 3 Deer Note to compensate, and both are obviously not nearly as good as opening a single Xaymin. Next, we're going to ban Extreme Session. I know what you're going to say, Toon World, that's too harsh a hit. How could you possibly do that to your baby? Well, remember we're trying to make sure the deck is dead, and I mean like dead. Extreme Session is the whole reason why Punk can even be considered viable in our current TCG format, and obviously would be the key enabler for Punk in its hypothetical tier 1 format. Removing the field spell from the equation completely strips the archetype of a crucial resources engine and of an extender that enables broken plays. Finally, we're going to ban Psychic End Punisher. As with Apocryphal Towers and Masterpiece in their respective format, we're going to do away with the fabled honorary Punk Towers. This strips Punk of a strong and easy win con, making the deck much easier to handle. It also prevents a basically crippled Punk from turning into a Punisher turbo strategy. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. If this were ever to happen to Punk, you might as well drop the deck. I mean, I personally wouldn't, because it would be an extremely funny challenge to still try and play the deck, but realistically the deck is in the ground. You could play Punk as some sort of Frankenstein OTK deck abusing Rising Carp and Amazing Dragon, but the demolished consistency of the archetype would severely hinder how reliably that all goes off. Fortunately for us, this is only a hypothetical scenario. Rogue decks are rogue for a reason. They're not always perfect, and their flaws typically prevent themselves from being meta. Yet, it's always entertaining to speculate on the what if. In other words, that situation whereby your rogue deck is suddenly regarded as a competitive threat. In our case, should Punk ever become meta, it's possible we might be asking the same questions I posed in this video of how we should hit the archetype on several ban lists. This video is very clearly subjective in nature. If you have any questions on my thought process in designing it and or the content within it, please let me know down below. I also welcome any other takes on this theoretical topic, especially if you think I should have hit Punk in a different way on one or more of the 3 ban lists. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy this type of content and want me to make more. Otherwise, I'll cue the outro.